Hello, this is Mike here with Creation Creator Healing. I wanted to create a video tonight entitled, You Don't Become Your Higher Self Becomes You. I'm really excited to talk about this because this is based on Paul Selig's books, his first book in the Beyond the Known Trilogy. So it's based in that, but I'm going to kind of put my own spin on what it means to me, and how I think it can be a really relatable, powerful teaching for anyone. So you don't become your higher self becomes you. So in those books, the guides talk about this, and basically what it means is that a lot of people try through very intense effort on their own part to become their higher self, to connect to their higher self, to basically prove themselves to themselves so they feel like they're worthy of knowing, connecting to, becoming their higher self. And it's really interesting when the way the guides teach this in those books, because it comes from a fearful kind of scared place, because your higher self is already real. If you think that you're your smaller self trying to become your higher self, then you're automatically assuming that your smaller human self has more power than the great cosmic higher self. And so whenever you connect to that energy that's already real, that energy, your higher self, is more, deep down, it's more real than your separate ego, physically oriented self. And that energy wants to, you could call it energy, but to be more accurate, that mighty, conscious, divine being that you really are, it wants to assume itself as you. So whenever you learn that you're not your small self trying to become your higher self, you're actually your higher self trying to become reconnected to your smaller self, you realize that you don't have to figure out how to do it as your little self. All you have to do is to realize that while, you have a smaller self, an ego, you have your own lens of perception, your fears, your doubts, your biases, how you see things. But the work of reconnecting to the higher self is not the ego's work. It's the higher self's work to reconnect to your small self and reassume it in the light of your higher self. And so as the small self, you set an intention to allow your higher self to consume. That's kind of a silly word. People probably would think that's a negative word, but the higher self can completely just take command over and reintegrate all parts of the small self, because it's already real. The small self doesn't know how to do that. The ego doesn't know how to do that. You can't become your higher self as an ego. The ego's job is to humbly submit to the higher self's work and to set an intention that you want your higher self to do the work for you. And your higher, that's what alignment with the divine will means, is aligning to your higher self wanting to assume your individualized ego physical expression, and they can both perfectly overlap, align, and become one. And it's very, very liberating. And this idea is also kind of similar to how people think about ascension of the physical plane into the higher fifth dimensional plane where the higher self resides. People call it so many names, but it's where the higher self, it's the construct of mutual shared agreement where all our higher selves live. And that realm is equally descending, right? So that's a descension, sort of the opposite of an ascension, not exactly. Basically it just means that higher dimensional energies are descending into the 3D physical earth matrix at the same time as physical earth matrix energies are accelerating and ascending into a higher energetic vibrational frequency. Ascension and descension happen at the same time. So the idea of trying to become your higher self as the ego, as the small, separate self, it's kind of like only seeing things from the ascension perspective of the work of the physical to reach forward up into and reconnect to and kind of pull down the higher energy, the higher self, the 5D consciousness, the fifth dimensional earth plane, right? So like the physical self does have to do work. It has to take care of the human body, eat healthy, live a meaningful life, serve others, make a difference, exercise. The work of the ego is to prepare the way for the higher energies. And that's like some physical work, like I just said, but it's also the intentional work. You set the intention. You want your higher self to do this for you because you don't know how. You can prepare for it, but the higher self knows how to do the descension of energy, where the higher self becomes your lower self. And ultimately they become so ingrained that there's no difference at all anymore. And the fifth dimensional Christ frequency is completely immersed in three-dimensional physical reality. And so you have to understand that that's two sides of the equation that have to happen. And it's not the ego's job to become the higher self. It's the ego's job to prepare to make a worthy vessel of embodying that frequency. But it's not the ego's work to become the higher self. The ego just sets that intention from a place of humility and gratitude and faith that the higher self is what it's always been, and that energy can effortlessly reassume every part of the ego self, because that's what the ego really is. It's just a separated, fragmented aspect of infinite consciousness that is kind of confined in an experience of perceiving itself through physically defined body, ideas, individual and collective ideas about what's real and what's not real, collective collective agreement structures about like language. Here's what things are. Here's how things should be. Here's how things are going to continue being. All of that gets completely recreated and reintegrated into the higher self, where everything is constantly returning to itself and being recreated in a new way. Like, that's what divinity is always doing, is it's reaching a completion and a rebirth perpetually. Just infinite completion, recreation, and rebirth. And that's what happens when the higher self becomes you. And you're not the little self trying to become the higher self. But whenever you let the higher self become your ego self, that's when that energy aligns and everything is constantly being recreated. And so that's really just what I wanted to speak about tonight. I love this approach to higher self embodiment, and I know it's real because I can feel it. We know it's real. The ego doesn't know how to reconnect to its holiness, but your higher self knows how to reconnect you to its holiness, because your holiness is your higher self, and your higher self can break all of those chains of self-imposed doubts and addictions to suffering. All of it can be completely broken in the snap of your finger. Or should I say a snap of your higher self's finger as you. So thank you for listening. This has been Mike with Creation Creator Healing, and I invite you to meditate on allowing your higher self to become you, and not endlessly working on yourself and trying to become your higher self. Just be healthy, make healthy choices, align to what's real for you, be creative, be joyful and grateful, and do what you love, and uplift other people's lives, of course. But just realize you're preparing the way for your higher self to do all the heavy lifting of reconnecting your ego self to your divine self. Your higher self's going to do all that, and it's going to do it absolutely perfectly and effortlessly. But you just have to give it permission and know that that's how the universe works. That's how perfect the universe is. So thanks for listening. Everyone have a blessed day or night, wherever you are in space and time. Thanks. Goodbye.